In this video I'm going to talk about iteration. And so I have my Dr. Java window open and I'm going to type a comment at the top that just says iteration. Now this word is a word that's used pretty much specifically in or usually just in computer science. I don't really know that I've heard it anywhere else. Although I have heard the word reiterate before, and the word reiterate just means to say again. And you can think of iterations as really just doing something again and again and again, and you'll see it'll make a lot of sense when we do loops in Java. So we're going to do while loops in this video. So make a class, public class, and let's call it loop, or I'll call it iteration example, and then set up your public static void main string args, that line that you just memorized for now, public static void, and then in parentheses string args, and make sure you type it just like that. And don't forget to close your curly braces, do that right away, and now you're set up to work. If you're following along, please type this out as well and make sure that you're checking back and forth and compiling your program to see that you have done everything right. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a while loop, but first I need a couple of variables. I'm going to make one integer and call it counter. I'm going to make another integer and call it sum. So what we're going to do in this program is I'm going to go through a loop however many, a certain amount of times. Every time I go through the loop, my counter will increase. So let me put that comment here. Each time through the loop, the counter will increase. Alright? And then the sum, we'll do something kind of fancy with this, and you'll see what that'll be in just a second. So let's do our loop. So while, and we're going to, because the counter increases each time through the loop, we'll do while the counter is below a certain value. For now, let's just pick 10 to keep it nice and simple. Okay, do your curly braces for the loop. Now inside of the loop, we're going to need to do something with our counter. As I said, each time through the loop, the counter will increase. So I'm going to do simply counter equals counter plus 1. Now there are other ways to write this as well, right? I could have also done, and I'll write a comment, I could have also done counter plus equals 1, or I also could have just done counter plus plus, no space, counter plus plus, there we go. I could have done either of these things and they would have done the same task for me. I think writing it all out makes the most sense for beginners, so that's what I'm writing it in there for. And now we're going to see what we're going to do with this sum variable. So yeah, incrementing the counter is important, but it's not actually what the purpose of our program is. What we want to do is we want a program that calculates problems like this. What is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7? And ours is going to go all the way up to 10. So plus 8 plus 9 plus 10. And technically, since the counter has to be less than 10, we're really only going to go up to here. And we'll see how this works step by step in a second. So I have to initialize these variables. Right now counter and sum don't have values, so let's initialize them. Counter equals 0, sum equals 0 initially as well. And so inside the while loop, the first time through, since counter is 0, this condition will evaluate to true because 0 is less than 10. Which means since the condition is true, that means we'll go inside the while loop and execute the code. So we're in here now. Besides incrementing the counter, which is what this line does, we also want to do the sum. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to keep track of the sum each time through the loop, and we're going to add to the current sum whatever the counter is. So sum, and again this first time through the sum is 0, we're going to just add whatever the counter is. So the counter this first time through is also 0. So sum equals sum plus counter. So this is really not going to do anything the first time through because sum is 0 to start with and counter is 0. So this is going to say 0 plus 0, and we're going to basically save that answer to the variable sum. Again, this is the assignment operator, so I guess a technical way of saying it would be we're assigning the outcome of this expression to this variable. Okay, so sum will equal 0 at the end of that the first time through the loop, and then we'll increment the counter. Counter equals counter plus 1, and go back up to the top of the loop. Now counter is not 0 anymore, it is 1. 1 is less than 10, which is true, and so we're going to go inside the while loop again. This first line now says sum equals sum plus counter. Well, sum is still 0, but counter now is 1. So 0 plus 1, store the answer here. 0 plus 1 is 1, so now sum is equal to 1. Okay, and to keep track of this, I'm going to open up a Word document. I'm just going to make a new one. Okay, and so here's my Word document, and I'm going to make a table that keeps track of my iterations. So I'm going to insert a new table here, and all I need is 2 columns for it, one for counter and one for sum. Okay, so the first time through the loop, counter was 0, not O, counter was 0, there we go, and sum was 0. But the second time through, counter was 1, and sum now was 1. Going back into the code, I'm just going to put a comment at the bottom of this, and I'm going to say update table in Word. And that's just a note to myself, so that when I get past these two, I'm going to update my table in Word. And you know what, actually I'm going to put that at the very beginning, right here. Okay, so the first time through the loop, I updated the table in Word. Those were both set to 0. Second time through the loop, I updated my table in Word, and really actually if I did it at the very beginning of this while loop right here, well, the second time through the loop, sum had not increased, so sum was still equal to 0, so I should put this to 0. But now the third time through, now the next time through the loop, counter is at 2, because it increased, and sum now is at 1. Sum is at 1. Okay, so I updated my table. Now let's continue. Sum equals sum plus counter. Well, let's look at those values. Sum is 1, counter is 2, add those together, and it's 3. So now sum is 3, and if we go back up here to see the original purpose of the problem, really what we've done so far is 1 plus 2. So now our sum is at 3, which is 1 plus 2. Good. And now we increment the counter and go back up to the top of the loop. Well, the counter is now 3, and we go inside the loop. Let's update our table in Word. So the counter is 3, and the sum now is 3. Alright, well, sum equals sum plus counter. Okay, 3 plus 3. And counter equals counter plus 1. Alright, so sum now is 6, counter is 4. Let's continue. So counter is 4, sum is 6. Down to the next line. Well, sum equals sum plus counter. That's 6 plus 4 is 10. And I can just save that right away. I'll just pick up the pace here. That would be 10, and the counter would be 5. Okay, and if I go through the loop again, the counter now will be 6, and the sum will be, well, 10 plus 5, 15. And I would continue this until the counter is no longer less than 10. So let me continue on. 7, and now 6 plus 15 is 21. 8, 7 plus 21 is 28. 9, 8 plus 28 is 36. And let's figure. And so now I had recorded right here, updated the table, okay, with 9 and 36. Now the sum is going to be sum plus counter, so we're going to do 9 plus 36, which is 45. Okay, so right here after this line now, we're still in the while loop, sum is 45. Counter equals counter plus 1. Well, counter was 9, so now it's going to be 10. When we go back up to the top of the loop, right here, we have 10 is less than 10. Well, that's false. So now we're going to break out of the loop, and it's going to execute whatever code is down here, which right now is nothing. So I'm going to type system.out.println, and I'm going to print my sum. So if I'm correct, then the sum I should be printing is 9 plus 36, which is 45. I'm going to save my program. In my Java examples folder. Hopefully the program compiles. And I did not type my main method right. I forgot the word main. And now if I run the program, again, if it did what I said, it'll give me 45. And it did. 45. So if I want to do this again, what I would do, let's try a different number. Let's say what if counter is less than 5 now? Okay. Well, it should give us the answer of 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. So 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 3 is 6, plus 4 is 10. So this should give us 10. Let's see if it does. Yes, it did, 10. And we could try something else. Let's try something in between. Let's try 7. Okay, so if this is 10, then plus 5 is 15, plus 6 is 21. So we're expecting 21 now. And we got 21. So in order to be able to predict what the code is going to do, and in order to be able to write the code to make it do what you want it to do, you have to be able to logically step through the while loop, just like we did with this table. And you might not have to write out a table every time, but you have to be able to step through, is it going to do what you expected? And you have to think very carefully about what this condition is doing. You have to ask yourself, okay, well, how big is counter going to have to be before this evaluates to false? In this case, it has to be 7 or greater.